Identifying costs and timing for your development feasibility. So let's look at all these different costs that are involved in doing a development and the things that you need to allow for in your financial feasibility. So there are two kinds of costs: direct and indirect costs. What do we need to know them? I'll get to that in a second. But for the time being, let's see what they are. For example, direct costs are also known as the hard costs. For example, they're directly related, like brick and mortar costs or material and labor costs, for example. Indirect costs are also known as soft costs. For example, they are indirectly related. It's quite obvious. Invisible costs, but I'll get to you in a second in the sense that why are we talking about all this obvious stuff? When we get to the financial feasibility thing, and I'll show you why we're talking about all of this. Invisible costs. Usually indirect costs are invisible costs. For example, they are costs that we've incurred for legals, finance, accounting, on consultants. They can even continue when the project is complete. For example, you finish the project, you still have to pay the accountant, you still have to pay some holding costs, or there could be something that the consultant would need to pay. More examples are insurance or maintenance cost or security, for example. Now, hard costs and eligible soft costs. The reason we are talking about this is because a lot of financiers will not fund a whole lot of ineligible soft costs, for example. So let's see what they are. Hard costs, they are direct costs related to construction. For example, they could be land acquisition, site improvement, building costs, and all of these costs can be funded by a lender or a bank or any kind of specialist financier who will fund all of these costs. Eligible soft costs would include indirect costs related to construction, for example, consultants, architect, engineer, marketing. There could be certain insurance, for example, during the construction process. The builder needs to insure this because the site is with the builder, so it's builder's responsibility to make sure that it's all covered. You've got council contributions or property taxes. These are eligible soft costs that can be funded by a developer. By a financier. Construction loan fees and interest, but only construction loan fees and interest. Ineligible soft costs would include, that means they basically mean that they are ineligible for debt financing. That would include your accounting fee, your developer's cost of equity, interest costs on holding the land. So let's say there is a lag between the time you acquire the land and you start construction. So let's say there's 9 months apart. You haven't got a permit as yet, or haven't got a development approval on the site as yet, but you've acquired the land and then you got to hold it for 9 months. That the interest that you pay during that 9 months will never be funded by your construction financier. Interest costs on holding land, costs incurred when consultants with consultants before the planning permit, marketing and agents commission paid at the time of signing the contract. So let's say you hire a marketing company who goes and finds you a buyer who will sign an unconditional contract of sale to buy the end townhouse or buy the end apartment. But this marketing company has this condition that the moment they get you an unconditional contract, you got to give them 50% of their commission up front. So that kind of cost will never be funded by the bank at the time of your construction, unless of course you've got other collateral that you can put forth and borrow more in your feasibility and all of that. So everything can be funded, of course, but those are part of the ineligible costs in debt financing, and any kind of operating deficit. So why do we need to know them? It is because lenders usually do not fund soft costs, And developers' equity contribution can change significantly based on whether they are required to fund soft costs or not, or to what extent of soft costs they will need to fund. So this can actually developers get caught out many times thinking that this certain cost will be funded um, by the bank, but it doesn't always happen.